Thank you so much, Noel, for the introduction. I'm happy to be here this morning, so can share a few nuggets on what has been currently trending. I believe everyone just saw the decision that was made with the Office of the Data Protection just the other day. And it's high time that as business owners, we should have this conversation. So I think Paul Peter, if you could kindly. All right. So the conversation for today, in my thinking and like how would I present this information in an easier way to understand for business owners, for people in corporate organizations, and what really do you need to know to ensure that you're on the right side of the law. So our topic will be on safeguarding sensitive information in the digital age. And as just a simple guide to data protection for businesses, understanding data protection, what constitutes sensitive information, how do you process data, how do you ensure that you're compliant. Those are the key things that we'll be looking at today. So the issue of data protection in the country has been there. It's just that the Data Protection Act 2019 was implemented specifically for data protection, but several legislations were covering the issue of data protection. If you look at under the finance, people in banking industry, there are certain regulations that they're required to follow. If you look at the health industry, there's also issues of data protection that fall there. Even us as lawyers, we are guided in terms of data protection, what we can divulge, what we cannot. So it's not a new thing per se that has just come up. It's just that it has been codified more in a statute that now people are having a better understanding of. So in terms of legal framework, the basis, of course, is our constitution. There is the right to privacy, which has been explicitly stated, and then now there is the main statute, which is the Data Protection Act 2019. There's also Access to Information Act, and also we are governed generally by the EU General Data Protection Regulations. So as you ask yourself about data protection, the first question is what constitutes data? That when you're thinking, when you're processing or you're doing your day-to-day business, in your mind, you should be asking yourself, what is data? And this has been provided for under the Data Protection Act. It includes information processed by means of equipment operating automatically in response to instructions given for that purpose, or it's recorded information which is held by a public entity, or information recorded as part of a relevant filing system, information that forms part of an accessible record, or information recorded with the intention that it should be processed by means of equipment operating automatically in response to instruction given for that purpose. You can see they are very specific about what data constitutes. So for example, in an organization, before you offer someone a particular service, you tell them, oh, you're required to register for this. Kindly provide us your name, your ID number, location, or certain information like that. That ideally already is data that you're processing. Paul, if we can proceed to the next slide. So when you think of data, they've gone further and explained what personal data is. And this is actually the key thing that as organizations, we need to be on the lookout for. Personal data. This is data or information that can easily identify or identifiable, it's relating to a person and can help you identify, or it's in an to identify a natural person. So what do I mean by that? If it's information that is, for example, when I say, let me have your ID number, that is information that is specifically provided for one person. So easily when you have someone's ID number and you have the right database, you can be able to get the other details about this person. So things like your name, ID number, phone number, bank account details, and all those types, those are information relating to identified or identifiable natural person. And that is where specifically you're guided. How do you collect this data? How do you process it? What are the legal requirements and all that? So when I move forward, I come to ask myself, what is data processing? So this is any operational where you either collecting, recording, organizing, you're also either storing that information. There's a way you can retrieve or use that information. And also that the information can be erased or deleted, and or even a combination of all those processes. Ideally, under the Data Protection Act, there is lawful processing of data. And when we say lawful processing of data, the information, once you're collecting that information, first of all, you need to ask yourself, have you gotten consent from the data subject for you to process the information? Like, is the person aware that, is the data subject aware that you are collecting their information? So a data controller or data processor shall not process personal data unless the data subject consents to the processing of that information. And also you need to show that once you're collecting this information or processing the information or data that you've collected, it's actually, you have to prove that one, it's necessary for the performance of a contract. So like, you actually need this information or this data to do to perform something on your end. And by performance of a contract, maybe is offering the specific services or services that you're offering to this data subject. When you think about data subject, could be it's a client, a consumer of your goods or service. So you need to show that, number one, it's necessary for you to collect this information. You're not just collecting the information for the sake of doing so. So also that you're actually compliant with the legal obligations which you've been subjected to, or in order for you to protect vital interest of the data subject or another natural person. The other lawful ground for you to collect, to process personal data is in order to protect the vital interest, for the performance of a task carried out in the public interest or in the exercise of official authority vested in the controller. The other ground could be the performance of any task carried out by public authority or exercised by any person in the public interest of any functions of a public nature. Ideally, also, you should be able to show it's for legitimate interest pursued by the data controller or processor. And finally, maybe for the purpose of historical, statistical, journalistic, literature, and art or science or research. So those are some of the grounds that have been provided for collection of data or personalized data. So when you look at it, then maybe the question is, why is data protection important for organization? The long and short of it is, why should I, as an organization, why is it important for me to be compliant, or why should I know about data compliance? Of course, number one being that you're required by law to do so. So you wouldn't want to be in a position where you're not following the law. As we've seen that the Office of the Data Protection is serious about implementing the laws. So adhering to data protection laws is not only like a legal requirement, but also essential for avoiding, fines, legal consequences, because non-compliance can result in significant financial penalties and also damage to your business. There's also the issue that you build trust and reputation with your customers, clients, and partners. Because imagine you hear that an organization that you've entrusted your information with was hacked or data was leaked. There's a certain confidence and trust that comes with knowing that your information is safely held by an organization. So a data breach can severely damage a company's reputation and even erode the trust that stakeholders place in it. So by ensuring that you're within the data protection laws, it demonstrates a commitment to ethical business practices. By this also, you're building customer confidence. Customers are more likely to engage with your business if you prioritize their security and personal information. There's that, it boosts their confidence, it fosters loyalty, and yeah, because the customer or your consumer, that being the data subject in this instance, that their information is safe with you. And at the end of it all, when we look at this, ideally as businesses, the whole goal is to make money and do business. So once you have loyalty for your customers, I think it's just it's a effect that goes that if you're able as a business to demonstrate that you have robust data protection practices, you have that competitive edge, as many customers will always seek business where they know the information is safeguarded properly. We've seen, I wouldn't want to mention names, but especially for ladies, if you ask them which taxi should they not use, I'm sure in their mind, they know for their safety which one they should use and which one they should not use, despite the fact that some of them might be cheaper than others. But already, if in the market there is a certain perception towards how maybe you handle certain issues, for the safety for a consumer, they will go for where they know that their interests are prioritized. Also, you're able to ensure that there's risk management in your business. Effective data protection is a critical component of overall risk management. By identifying, assessing, and mitigating potential risks associated with data breaches, business can safeguard their operations. Because ideally, if there's a data breach, it means either you might lose certain information that is crucial for the day-to-day running of your business, or you might find yourself you're being blackmailed by hackers or God knows what, such things. So it's important to ensure that your operations are safeguarded, there's continuity, and also there's stability. And ideally, at the end of it, also there's the aspect of intellectual property. This is a valuable asset for businesses. So data protection measures help safeguard proprietary information, if there are any trade secrets or other critical intellectual property that you might need to protect. Also, if you have proper data storage and guidelines, there's also that aspect of operational continuity, because when there's a data breach, of course, it will disrupt your business operations, and this will lead to downtime and potential even financial loss. So a robust data protection measures contribute to operation continuity and by preventing or minimizing the impact of security incidents. So we cannot ignore why it is important to have data protection systems in place in your business, in your organizations. So what are the principles of data protection if you think about it? Then the key thing that as a business organization or an organization you should be thinking about is that data protection should be by design, but not by chance. You should have put necessary measures in your business to ensure that the data that you hold is held well, and there are necessary safeguards that have been put in place. So as I've been talking, I have highlighted how there's a constitution foundation on data protection. Every person is guaranteed their right to privacy. So once you collect information, you should know that you're guided by these principles, and they're clearly provided for under the Act that if you're collecting any data, it should be in a lawful and fairly and in a transparent manner. It should be explicit, specified, and legit for legitimate purposes. And you're not supposed to, once you've collected information, say you've informed your data subject or your consumer that the reason why we are collecting this information is for XYZ. Your use of that information should end there. You're not supposed to collect information and use it in a manner incompatible with the purposes that you had already informed your consumer what the purpose was for. There's also the other aspect of data minimization. Do not collect a lot of information that you really do not require. So the information you're collecting should be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary. Also collected only when you're collecting the data, what you also should have in mind is only collected where a valid explanation is provided for, whenever information is relating to family or private affairs is required. So as you can see, you might end up as a business, maybe you're collecting certain private sensitive information. So you need to limit that to only what is really going to help you, as we had earlier discussed, maybe performance of your contract or for whatever research that you're doing. And also when you're collecting information, the information should be accurate and where necessary, kept up to date, with every reasonable step being taken to ensure that any inaccurate personal data is erased or rectified without delay. So as a data subject, one of the rights that a data subject has is to have the information corrected, so they can come to you and tell you, no, this information about myself has not been captured properly. So that is one of the other principle of data protection. So, and also when you collect any data, it's kept in a form which identifies the data subject for no longer than is necessary for the purpose which it was collected. So you just don't hold data and it's like you are having a database of information and you're not actually using it. And also there are regulations that have been provided on transferring or use of data outside the jurisdiction of the country. If you're to transfer any data outside the country, you should be able to also show that the country that you're transferring the data has similar regulations that like the ones that are in Kenya. So for example, if they are also maybe part of they're guided by the EU regulations, then in such instance, then therefore you can be able to transfer the data. However, if another jurisdiction do not have those guidelines, you're obligated not to transfer that information to that country. So then now this leads us to the big issue, which is data breaches, which can happen at any organization or any business. It's key to know that once maybe there's a breach, what do you do? Or once you suspect there's a breach in your organization, the Act defines data breach as a breach of security leading to accidental or an unlawful destruction, loss, altercation, unauthorized disclosure of or access to personal data transmitted, stored, or otherwise. As an organization, the first thing, the moment you realize that there's been a data breach, what you're required to do is notify the data commissioner, and this is mandatory to do so. Whether you suspect, whether you've confirmed, whether you've done your investigations and known what is the cause of the breach or whatever the case might be, before you do all that, you're required to notify the data commissioner within 72 hours that there's been a breach or a potential breach of your information and data. And also you're required to notify the data subject as soon as possible. For the data subject, it has not been provided within what time frame, but within reasonable time frame. The data subject should know that there's been a breach. There's nothing as bad as a consumer. Maybe your say bank does not notify you that there's a breach of certain information and you're seeing it on the news and you're worried, is my information safe? What do they know about my data? So like as an organization, what are the key things you should be looking at in terms of data breaches? This could be because the biggest issue, in my opinion, is your employees, because that is where the leakage will likely happen. Because if you put good processes in your organization, unless now in such as instances where there are hackers, malware and ransom usually happens to be, ideally, someone has downloaded something that really needs not to be downloaded, or there's a weak password and someone has been able to breach it, or your employees are actually compromised. Also, something key is what is the relationship between your organization and third-party vulnerabilities. You know, maybe you have control within your organization. However, the information that you're sharing with third parties in the course of you doing business is not safeguarded properly. And then insecure data storage, and all this, when I think about it, is how well are your employees understanding of the data protection regulations, how they're supposed to store information, how their information is supposed to be transmitted within the organization, and so on and so forth. So in the event there is a data breach, as I've stated, first thing is you need to notify the data commissioner. It's a mandatory requirement within 72 hours, and also your data subject. So things you should be doing is investigating the breach thoroughly, like what was the nature of the breach, who had access to that information, what type of data was breached, how many people have been affected by that. I mean, data subjects, employees, what sort of information was accessed or was breached. So then after that, you should be thinking, what actions have I taken to recover the data? And what are the remedial actions that I'm going to do after that? So as an organization, as a business, ideally, those are the things that you need to have in mind in terms of data breaches. So we've discussed what are the data breaches, how do they happen? So the thing, number one is compliance. We've already been given guidelines, strict guidelines on what is required of a data processor. So just if you comply with the provisions that you've provided with. Number two, you should be thinking about training your employees, and I encourage employees to use secure password practices. So think about how in certain organization, one person is the one who initiates and then someone else approves. Those are just steps to ensure that data is protected and how to avoid breaches. Also, maybe if you think about how certain organizations, your password expires maybe after 3 months and you're required to refresh, so that you have not put, how you know how human beings can be. They have the same password all through their pins are the same, their passwords are the same, and if the event one is able to access one, they can access all their other platforms that they log in. So implement strong access controls. So even ideally, once maybe, for example, certain information is able to be retrieved, or certain people, for example, not everyone maybe is able to access certain information in the organization. So depending on the level someone is, this information, they're able to get to have access to this information till a certain extent. Maybe also when you're on another level, you're able to get further information. So those are just standard practices for organizations that you can adopt. The other thing is conduct regular risk assessments and see where are we prone to breaches. You're able to see what can we improve in an organization. And also the other thing is to encrypt sensitive data, so that even if someone is able to access this data, unless they know how to convert that information, they will not be able to understand what it actually means. Have proper softwares and systems are updated. Ensure you're constantly monitoring and auditing your systems in your business, in your organization, and also like have a very a plan in place of incident response planning. Like if you suspect that there is an incident, what are the steps that the employees or the data controller need to do once they suspect that there is an incident that has occurred. And then also that there are secure data storage and regular backups. Ideally, these are not all the things you can do. There are many other things depending with your organization, depending with the type of business that you're doing. And have you seen the consequences of data breaches can be dire to your business? So you can be given a penalty notice and even administrative fines by the Office of the Data Protection. So we need to, as businesses, as organizations, we need to take the issue of data protection seriously. So I think I've gone on and on and on about all this. Ideally, at the back of our minds, data protection is a really crucial issue in this digital age, where we are collecting a lot of information, personal information, and organizations are collecting a lot of information and processing a lot of information. So as an organization, I think I've asked, you should at the back of your mind asking yourself, why am I collecting this data? Is this data within the principles of data privacy? What do I need it for? To what extent am I using it? So, and also with how with the increase in the collection of information, there's also an increase of cyber threats, and businesses need to handle have proper, robust data protection measures to safeguard sensitive information. Clearly, we see the impact of breaches in business. It's not just a legal requirement. There's an aspect of confidence, loyalty that comes with it from your consumers. So it's important that you ensure that your consumers, your clients can trust that the information they are providing with is safeguarded, is stored properly, is being utilized for the right purpose. So organization, at the end of it all, organizations that are able to prioritize and effectively implement data protection measures contribute to a more secure and privacy respecting digital environment. I think I'd like to end there. I really didn't want to talk and bore you with legal terms, but just a way to show how organizations can collect data, store information, and use it. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak about the issues of data protection in this digital age, and how businesses can ensure that they are compliant. Maybe if there are any questions, I can take it up now.
Yeah, I know there was a first question which was directed to me only before you pick it, Noel. It was from PR HOD, who asked whether video and photos are included, because you mentioned names, mentioned ID, whatever identifiable. So they just wanted to know whether videos and photos are included. I think that's
Of course, because think about it, isn't it information that can identify a data subject? So if it's information that can identify a data subject, then that is sensitive information. Therefore, it applies.
Thank you.
Okay,
Noel,
I just wanted to say, I wanted to say that Otieno, Paul Peter, and I will be asking the questions. So Otieno, Paul Peter, you can just help me fish out the questions in the chat. First question is, do the data protection laws oblige major aggregators of data like the government, banks, and supermarkets to enter into an informed consent process with non-disclosure agreements and have robust firewalls, antivirus, and anti-hacking software, etc., to prevent phishing and malware, etc.?
Okay, if I have understood the question is, are they required to have malware? You see, you're not told by the data protection you have to have this specific malware in your organization or robust networks or whatever it is, but you've been told this is how you should hold, transfer, process this data. So as an organization, it's up to you to figure out which is the best process, which is the best malware for my organization to ensure that this data is actually not breached. So it is up to you as a data processor to ensure that you are doing what is best or in the best of your capabilities, that the information is not breached. I hope I've answered the question.
So, what happens in the event, in a situation where you're not comfortable with a clause in an NDA? Sorry, the question just disappeared.
Is the standard, this is the second one, is the standard DPIA guideline from ODPC, Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. I think it's an act of parliament. Maybe it's not complete question, I don't know.
Okay, the regulations are provided by the Office of the Data Protection. The Office of the Data Protection is the body that has been created by the Data Protection Act. So they are the ones who will provide with regulations. From time to time, they come up with regulations that you need to adhere to. Just like okay, this is what happens. Any act of parliament comes with regulations that are gazetted after some time. So as time goes by, the office that has been created by that act always come up with specific guidelines, and those are the regulations that help you be compliant with the data, with the specific statute. So if I got it correctly, they were asking about the regulations, and yes, the same are provided by the Office of the Data Protection. Hope I have answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. Then there was a question which Noel was trying to read. What happens in a situation where you are not comfortable with the clause in an NDA? What steps should one take?
That is more of a contractual matter. Yeah. Ideally, any contract, there are terms that you might not be happy with. So it's up to you to negotiate the terms with whoever you're entering the contract with. And that's why maybe you might need a lawyer to help you understand maybe whatever contract you're signing, what are the impacts, and so on and so forth.
Great. Great. How do you identify sensitive data? I think that was said anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I had already gone through that when during my presentation.
Then Mercy, well, just to help him, it is a data that can identify the data subject. Well, Mercy Okoth is asking, good morning, allow me to ask. Wow, questions are coming sporadically. Allow me to ask, I recently had a scenario in FB Lite where I was asked to secure my account with a password, but I did not input a new password, and I realized I could not access my inbox message. I decided to uninstall Lite and used Facebook instead. I feel something was not happening right. How best can I go about it? Long question. may not necessarily be related to data protection, whatever in Kenya, but I don't know. What do you say?
In such instances, ideally, even for Meta and big organizations, you've seen that they are always being followed on issues on that privacy issues. They're always in court. So there's an aspect of data protection, yes, but the long and short of it is, ideally, unfortunately, if you're not happy or you suspect, and this goes back to the question of how data protection is key for businesses because they bring the issue of trust, loyalty, confidence in how a data subject is going to use that information. So unfortunately, if you're not comfortable with it, you can opt out of that service or product, whatever it is. And that's why as organizations, we need to be keen on how we are processing data and information, just to ensure that our consumers are confident in the process measures that we've put. Yeah.
Great. Next, we have yes, and Noel, which is the next one? Recently, I saw Office of the Data Protection Commission, OCDC, giving fines amounting to millions to institutions and clubs for not being compliant, being in the data space. I know there is information gap on the subject. Is there a way to sensitize the masses on the data protection laws? I think that is what we are doing today, a part of what we are doing. But do you have a comment on that?
Of course, with any new regulation, there will be some teething problems and challenges. But of course, the whole point is to always keep yourself informed what is happening. Now, for example, I'm sure not so many people were taking maybe the issue seriously until now that they've seen that the Office of the Data Protection is actually finding businesses for data misuse or breach. That is now when you're keen and you're like, all right, am I doing the right thing? So also just keeping yourself up to date with what is happening in your country is one of the ways to do this, yeah? And maybe if you need further assistance, it does not harm to ask a profession to come and take you through it and have a better understanding of your obligations. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah, somebody else is asking, yeah, that's Mercy again. What of institutions like MOH where we have several meetings and keep signing several forms with all personal details, name, ID, contacts? How safe are they? And I think that's the question. How safe are they? Or do they comply?
Unfortunately, I am not in a position to tell you how safe your information is being held by a third party. But ideally, the principles are there, the guiding principles are there. They need to adhere to that. And over and above that, I think I had mentioned how the issue of data protection in certain sectors is not a new thing. Health have they're always mandated to hold data subject information in a particular way. So these are ongoing things, and if you feel like your information is not safeguarded, you have a right as a data subject to confirm, is my information being held properly? Is it being utilized well? Are there safe measures to ensure that the same is not at risk? So
thank you very much. Well, I'll allow Crispin to maybe ask a question. He has his hand up.
Good morning, and thank you very much. Sorry, I'm driving, so I couldn't type my question. However, my question is to get the thin line that separates aspects to do with safeguarding and data protection. As we are aware, there are aspects of safeguarding that would fit into individuals' critical issues or critical data. And sometimes it turns out that during the investigation, that safeguarding aspect does not turn to be true. What would be the right of this particular person who was whose data was involved in the safeguarding issue? Because now there are two things: safeguarding and there's the data protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I hope you got.
Okay, if I understood it, it's like as a data subject, what is your right in the event maybe your information has been breached, or I think if I got it right. Of course, there are the consequences of data breaches, and we've seen what has happened, the Office of the Data Protection giving penalties to businesses that have breached data. However, as a country, maybe we've not gotten there, specifically with the Data Protection Act, but as a data subject, you may be eligible for compensation for breach of your data. So if you're able to prove that, yes, there was a breach of my data and these are the consequences, you can be able to seek compensation for the same. I don't know, hope I've answered the question.
Maybe he wants to have a rejoinder. Yes, Crispin.
Yeah, I think partly because in an organization, you might find that there are aspects that involve staff, because basically we've discussed from a corporate point of view, but then when it comes from the individual point of view, let's say between two staff who are involved on certain issues, then it becomes a little bit tricky in terms of getting the correct position in terms of infringement, because sometimes you get organization politics playing in, and staff accusing each other of various things. But at the end of it, when you investigate those issues, sometimes you find some are not standing, some are partially, and that brings in the aspect of in this particular case, actually fall under data protection or something like that. Otherwise, I'm very grateful. This is my first time joining this particular
report. Yeah?
Morning today, and I've shared it with all our staff to have a learning in the same. And I've seen someone says that it's always every Monday, which I think is a great idea. That advocate firm, I think I want to appreciate you for that, because it is through sensitization and empowerment that will help our people. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe if I can just add on to what when I was responding to Crispin. Ideally, also as an organization, you ought to have certain policies, and I think from my understanding, I see maybe you're touching on human resources, human resource matters in your organization. So there should be certain policies in place on how you deal with allegations, say if it matters to do with harassment or whatever the case might be. So those could be easily tackled in the organization if there are certain policies in place on how to deal with certain issues. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Then we have, there was another, there are quite a good number of questions. I know we cannot answer all of them. What you can do is you will share your contact. People will be able to reach you for more. But there was another one here I wanted to read. Thank you very much. This is from Maurice. Thank you very much for sharing. For the sharing. In practice, what should organizations do to be compliant? I think you said that, i.e., indicating if we indicate that we comply to Data Protection Act, is that enough? Or another situation is if we ask people to give consent for us to collect their data, is that enough?
So I think that was the heart of this discussion. At the end of it all, even the other laws in this country, and just because you've said that you've complied and you've not complied, your day will come. Ideally, at the end of it all, your day will come. And we need to see the bigger picture. It's not just about being compliant, but as I have highlighted, the effects of having robust data protection measures in your organization ideally ends up, the ripple effect is that you build customer loyalty, confidence. That means more business for you. Ideally, I think I've used an example, and I'm sure a lot of ladies understand this issue. The example I used with a certain taxi app, and all ladies know, I cannot use this taxi app at night. So why is it? Do you want your organization to be the sort of organization where people say, don't use their services, your information will be leaked or your information will be breached? So the bigger picture is, what is the effect of having robust data protection measures in your organization? It's not a matter of just being compliant, but the end goal is the customer confidence that their information is held and is being processed and managed in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I give one more person to ask, I see the hand is up, Barack Owino. There's somebody asking a very interesting question. This preventive measure depends on stability of the organization, be it financially. What about if an organization cannot afford some of this? What can they do to manage this risk?
For some, it's a basic thing. I think as I was discussing, for example, what information are you collecting? Are you collecting more than what you need so that you're being enriched? Those are simple things that you can actually adhere to. Yeah. Have you is the data subject aware that you're collecting this information? You don't need sophisticated systems for that, even if it's your filing system in your office. Also, as internally in your organization, who has access to that information? Is it that is sensitive information can be accessed by everyone where there is no accountability, right? So those are the things that you need to look at. You even in an organization, when you say that you might not have the proper budget for it, there are simple things that you can actually follow to ensure that you're compliant and that you have a proper data protection system in your organization. And at the end of it all, maybe it's something you need to think about investing in a proper system eventually to ensure that the data you're collecting is properly safeguarded.
Thank you. As I told you, there are very, very many questions. I'll ask Barack to to air his question.
Great. Thank you, host and Sylvia, for that informative sessions. I have two questions. One, could you share some resource or tools which as probably a health nonprofit organization can use to conduct the risk assessment? Because I know for us, the risk is quite huge. We interact with different people, different, demographics. And then secondly, if you're probably doing cross-border engagement, so probably within Uganda, TZ, Rwanda, and you're also interacting with individuals, getting their information, probably a bit of consent that is needed. Which law should you focus on? Which, like, is it for the mother country that you're originating from, or from where you are doing some of the interventions that you're doing? And then lastly, if probably you're giving out let me say funds to an organization not within your country, but then this organization is also serving beneficiaries on the other end. So in terms of contractual obligations, do you just do one contract that covers the issue of data protection overally, or should you, in every session that they're doing, you monitor those the specific data engagement or protection or consent forms? Because I know these are some of the challenges that most of us experience on a daily basis. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Barack. Quite interesting questions there. And I might not be able to answer them, but ideally, that is why you should have a data officer in your organization. to deal with certain issues. And for a more detailed, if you need more help with specifics that are touching on your organization, also you might need to think about seeking professional help to ensure that you are in line with the regulations. The issue of tools, those are something that once you approach a professional, they might be able to help you come up with tools specifically for your organization, because they are not at times blankets that apply to all. So maybe you can reach out to a lawyer or a data analyst and, go through all those processes. The other issue of cross-territorial border transactions, I think I mentioned that for organizations, your data should not be transferred to another jurisdiction if they do not have similar laws as the one that have been provided for in Kenya. So maybe you need to ask yourself, does this country have almost similar data protection laws as provided in our country? And also for contracts, and I keep on telling this, actually, not even in issues of data protection, each contract is unique, so you cannot use the same contract that maybe you're using locally with your third parties or partners in other jurisdictions, because certain key things might not be the same. So it's important that you customize everything depending with the circumstances of the case. I think that's the best way I can answer you, Barak. Hope I've tried to.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Noel is here, but I think that is the end of